up, Wizards? It is Dev from the place we like it of Magic, and we are here today to talk about something very special with a very special content creator that we haven't talked to in way too long. It's our friend PowrDragn. How you doing over there, buddy?
Dude, I'm great. I don't know how special I am, but yeah, this is like an overdue meeting. We need to do this more than once every 2 years.
Yeah, exactly. We need to get this on the schedule more often, man. We need to do this maybe once every couple of months instead of once every couple of years. I agree.
Yeah, we can do it at least with every set release if we wanted to.
Dude, that'd be actually awesome. Like, we don't even have to do this particular cynical video. We can actually do a video where we talk about how excited we are. When you think about it, this is a weird video for the two of us to do. We're going to talk about some overrated cards because this is one of the most overhyped sets in a really long time, and it is a good set.
Oh, great.
Yeah, we'll make that clear right off the bat. This set looks kind of incredible, to be honest. One of the better looking sets since like Kamigawa Neon Dynasty to me.
I'll say with the streamer event, this one I had probably more fun close games than I've probably had in any of them so far.
That's probably true. Like even after I got off stream and kept like trying to brew some stuff up, really enjoyable games. People were playing with some fun stuff. A lot of the cards from this set have like really interesting play patterns that are neat to play with and against, which I think is important. So not to say that this set is bad or the cards therein or, and I think this is important, even the cards in this video. Just because a card is on either one of our lists doesn't necessarily mean that it's a bad card or we don't like it.
Not at all.
Yeah.
There's several things people are going to look at and be like, how did this make your list? But it's like, remember, we're not saying this card is garbage, right? We're just saying, like I like to use a phrase that I might say it's a 7 when everybody else is saying it's an 11, right? Like that's really all that's about.
Yeah, like
it's just a different scale of how we view the cards. We're probably still going to play with most of these at some point throughout the season.
Yep.
Just we have different expectations of the cards.
Yeah, like I am straight up excited to play like half of my list.
There's at least 4 I'm pretty sure I have in deck list right now, waiting for Arena to go live.
Like some of these I'm pretty sure will actually end up seeing play in standard, but they'll be like role players in like 1 or 2 decks here and there rather than like, the world ending standard, staple that a lot of people seem to think some of these will be. So with that in mind, with the disclaimers out of the way and all that, I think we should probably move on and tell me first, since you're the guest, your honorable mention.
Now, this was feels like a little bit of a cop-out because it's technically 2 cards, but they come from 1 class of cards. So
it's honorable mentions.
Right off the bat.
I do that all the time.
They are Restless Ridgeline and Restless Prairie. And the reason is that one of them, having the 4-mana activation lands is much different than having a 3-mana activation land.
Yeah.
Especially when we already have 4-mana activation lands that get you a 4/4 all on their own and has other great abilities.
Yeah, right? Restless Cottage.
Yeah, that's kind of the problem with these, where as much as the colors that get to play these really wanted a creature land, they're not great independently, right? They need other creatures to do the thing they're trying to do. Because, I'm definitely going to be playing the red-green one in various Gruul builds or whatever, but it is only a 3 power for 4 mana, and, you have to have another thing to put the +2 on. So it's not great, but still good enough that you're going to play it because it's the only creature land you're going to have.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing. If there's a Gruul deck, if there's a Gruul aggro deck, it has to play this card. And I guess Gruul aggro already has Karplusan Forest, Copperline Gorge. It can afford a tap land or 2, even in an aggro deck, which is not something you usually want to do. But I think that if there's a Gruul aggro deck, it'll play the card. But that's a big if. And when you get into Jund and Naya and 3 color combinations, then you just have better combinations. Jund's Restless Cottage, it's just
exactly
it's better.
Play the better one. So you're not going to play 8 tap creature lands.
No.
I mean, I guess maybe there's one weird build somewhere that will, but generally you're not going to do that. Right?
There might be a lands deck out there somewhere. I've seen people talk about Splendid Reclamation plus Spelunking, because Spelunking makes your lands come into play on tap. Splendid Reclamation, you reanimate all your lands and they come into play on tap with Spelunking in play. But then still, you have to actually activate the creature lands and swing with them and stuff.
The green-white one has the problem of having the +1/+1 counter thing already stolen, right? Because I think that would have been perfect for the green-white one. And I sort of wondered that when I saw the red-white land. I kind of thought, well, okay, I guess this means we're not going to get the allied colors because this feels like it would have been a green-white activated ability or whatever.
Yeah.
But than we did. And it's like, okay, I guess pumping the rest of your creatures sort of fits. But if you don't have any other creatures, you're just attacking with a 3/3.
You know, I think like in like what, Bunnycorn? Is that a deck? Regal Bunnycorn? Is that even a deck? You know, I guess like Restless Prairie makes some sense. And of course, I'm going to make this disclaimer right now too. A card like Restless Prairie is going to see play in like every Selesnya commander deck that goes wide till the end of time. But in terms of like 60 card constructed, like competitive environments, yeah, there has to be a card or a deck for Prairie to go in. There has to be a deck for the green-red one.
Just in green-white and you don't have any other options, like, yeah, you play it. It's still fine. It's a creature. Like, not going to be mad you have it. It's just the upside doesn't get necessarily realized all the time.
Yeah. And, you know, I could see it going, you know, oh, the Restless Prairie. Like, this ends up being like +5/+5 because I got a bunch of guys out when I swing with it. But just like that sort of use case is more narrow, I think, than some people think it is, you know, especially in a Sunfall format. So I'm not convinced. There are creature lands in the set that are unbelievable, you know, like the black blue one looks good, the 4/4 shark with Death Touch, and then the blue white one looks phenomenal.
Blue white one's stellar.
It's unbelievable,
and you get a map.
Yeah, it's really, really good card. But you know, some are better than others in this case, and yeah, I think those are basically the two worst in the set. But let's see, my honorable mention, yours is really good, by the way, that was a good choice. But my honorable mention for this one is a Fanatical Offering. And I'm not going to spend too long on this one. I'm just going to say that, like, for the third time this previous season, it isn't Deadly Dispute. This card is just not Deadly Dispute. That's about all I have to say. I think people remember, like, first turn Shambling Gas, second turn Deadly Dispute, turn 3, 5 mana in my mono black deck, Lolth. And this card just doesn't do those things. Even with a Shambling Gas, like, we have a Shambling Gas, sort of. A Greedy Freebooter is in the format. And this still, like, it doesn't give you that 5 mana on 3 line, and it's not, I don't think it's what you want it to be.
It's close. It's close. But, and again, this is a good example, right? We're gonna play this card. It's in several deck lists I have already. Like, not saying this card is garbage by any stretch. But the play patterns are going to be different than what you were trying to do with Deadly Dispute. Just because that extra treasure every time does matter. Maps aren't terrible, but they're not treasure.
It's like the best thing about the extra map in the deck this wants to go in is that you can sack it to Dusk Rose Reliquary. I think that wants you to sack an artifact or creature when it comes into play, the new like 1 white removal spell. And then Bartholomew, you can sacrifice artifacts to that. So this is kind of, you know, draw 2 cards, +1/+1 counter on Bart, you know?
Yeah, there's definitely some uses for the artifact.
That's fine. Although in most cases, I think in this deck especially, I would rather have Corrupted Conviction, I think it's called. It's basically Village Rites, but it's in Standard. And this deck already plays, you know, Bartholomew, Ellisil Core, Vron, like a bunch of 2-drops, you know? So I don't know this deck or this card fits in the curve because you also want like Rite of Oblivion or Go for the Throat or like some removal. So you're just pushing a lot of 2s if you play this card too. And I think that it's probably better to be able to go like Ellisil Core on 2 into Bartholomew on 3, have Corrupted Conviction up, or like some other 1-mana card like Dusk Rose Reliquary, where you can't do that until turn 4 with this card. And that's just, it just throws a lot of stuff off. So I'm not sure about it, but I do think you're right. Like, this card could see some play, especially with the play patterns it presents in the deck that it goes in, because that deck uses artifacts.
Definitely makes them less. I have no doubt we'll see this getting played. Just because sacking something to draw 2 cards is just never going to be awful.
Yeah.
Like, even if you ignore the treasure or the map, like, that's totally okay. Yeah. I think you still get by. This card's more than playable. Just, it's not Deadly Dispute.
It just isn't. I mean, that's the bottom line, I guess, on that one. I guess the positive thing I want to leave with on this one is that it is a card for sacrifice decks that gives you another little thing to sacrifice. And not a lot of cards are like that. You know, like sack fodder and sack card in the same card. And that deck is looking to consolidate slots in that way. So I could see it, but it's just, you know, it's not the double D. But I guess let's move on into the actual list here. I am interested in your number 10. What's that going to be?
All right. My number 10 is one, like I said, people are probably going to start lighting up our list from the get-go. But
oh, this will be a controversial one. Yeah, it's going to be fun.
Souls of the Lost, actually. And this is tough because I like the card. I just don't know if there's something that needs this card. And what I mean by that is I've already built several versions of the Reanimator list, right? But we already have quality 2-mana things that do what this does, but more, right? We already have Somnophage that can fill a graveyard and be a big creature. You already have the Goyf that can fill a graveyard and be a big creature. And each of those puts more cards into your graveyard.
Into your yard.
Right? You already have the Fairy, the 2-mana one that can copy one of those things if it's in the graveyard.
Likeness Looter, great card.
Yeah. So do we need Souls of the Lost?
And there's Stick Fingers too. Like old Stick Fingers does that too.
Stick Fingers doesn't even hardly make the cut most of the time.
It's like I named the deck after Stick Fingers, and I still like sometimes Stick Fingers feels like the weakest card in the deck.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. So like I don't know if we just need another thing. Now, if this had some type of trample or can't be blocked by creatures smaller than 3 or whatever, something. Yeah. Then I think it would be a lot better. But I've had multiple opponents that had this card. One time it was a 20 power alongside 3 other big creatures, and they just sat around attacking, and I chumped it for like 3 or 4 turns, and then I won.
Yeah, because that's all it is. That's the problem in general with the Lurgoyf deck, is that it's just got big, dumb guys, you know? Like, they don't have any sort of evasion, or they don't trample. So
that's
often
why Likeness Looter is sweet, because it keeps flying.
It keeps flying. Exactly. It has that evasion, and that's really important.
My thing was just, I think for those builds, was that the thing I felt I needed redundancy on? Like, and I don't know if I just needed another 2-mana be really big thing.
Yeah.
Right?
This I'm not sure about in Lurgoyfs, but in a deck like Mono Black or like Black Red Reanimator. Something that's looking for a discard outlet in a color that should have it but doesn't, you know, like right now one of the only real discard outlets in Mono Black is Liliana, the 3-mana one.
Sure.
And this, and like we got a 1-mana equipment in this set that discards a card to equip. And I actually think that's a neat little card, especially like on curve 1-2 with the Raven Man. We can talk about that. But I think that like Black X Reanimator could be a deck, and it's been looking for something especially to replace like Fable of the Mirror Breaker. And I think that a card like this goes somewhat well in a deck like that, especially considering like your Reanimator spell is a permanent, right?
Yeah.
Cruelty of Gix. So when it does go to the graveyard, it contributes to Souls of the Lost, Power Toughness, you know, like there's interesting stuff about a deck like that. But ultimately, I have seen people like, this was like #1 on the professor's list for like modern cards or something like that. And I don't see it being like that well positioned. It may have been Pioneer or something, but one way or the other.
That could be an argument for that. I was mostly just thinking about Standard, so it could maybe have a home somewhere else.
And it could, but in Standard, I'm just seeing like, I understand it's a discard outlet. I, of all people, understand. I love like Reanimator. I want Mono Black Reanimator to be a thing. And I think this card may contribute to a deck like that, but at the same time, like, it looks like you're just kind of 2 for 1ing yourself for a creature that's going to be more understated than you think in the first few turns of the game, you know? So.
And still dies to go for the throw, get lost.
Yeah, it does die to removal. Yeah. I played against this in the streamer event a few times, and it seemed like in the early turns it could die to cut down a lot. So I really want to like it. It's actually...
It's not a turn 2 creature.
It's not. No. It's actually, and we'll denote this when it happens throughout these lists, because we don't know each other's lists going into this. When it's on, you know, like if you give up, say, a card that's on my list, I'll say that, you know, I'll let you know. Yeah. And if I say a card's on your list, you let me know. This is also on my list. It's not my number 10. This is actually my number 3.
It'd be interesting to see how many we have that are similar.
Yeah, me too. I'm really interested in that. But this is way up my list. I think this is woefully overrated, is all I'll...
What's your number 10?
My number 10 is Sahili Sun's Brilliance.
That also... Oh, no, that one didn't make my list. No, it was one of the ones I looked at, though. Yeah.
This almost didn't make mine because I'm not sure overrated is the right word. I see people getting very excited about what potentially this card can do, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I do see some folks on the internet, although not all of you, but I see some folks on the internet just going a little nuts, a little bananas with like what you think this card's going to do in Standard, because I see some people saying it's not going to be great. And then I see people fighting back like, nah, dude, just wait. You have no idea what this thing's going to do. And it's like, I don't think so, man. Like, it's the other half of Fable of the Mirror Breaker. It's reflection of Kiki Jiki. But here's the thing. It doesn't do all that other stuff.
The one thing, this is the type of card that sort of makes me wonder if this is going to be the case for a lot of stuff on our list, where they might all have really high theoretical ceilings,
Right.
but also really low floors.
Yeah.
Right. Like if you don't get the ideal scenario, how great is this on its own? But if you get it in the right scenario, could be virtually unbeatable or give you like a crazy board state or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So that might be the best way to look at a lot of stuff on our list. Now that I'm thinking about some of my other cards, like if you hit right, yeah, the ceiling's going to be way up here. But if you don't, how does it look the rest of the time? It might look
exactly. And you're right. The ceiling is very high on interactions with this card, but the floor is so low. Like it just dies to everything. You have to wait a turn for it to untap, and I've tried to make like amazing looking 2-drops work a bunch of times in standard, and that can be a really discouraging exercise, is all I'm saying.
Yeah.
You know?
For sure.
But what is your number 9 here? I think we've moved on to.
Yeah, I feel like this is one that might be better in older formats, but the Enigma Jewel. It's the 1 blue, comes into play taps for 2 colorless. You can activate this with 4 other things that have activated abilities, which is also kind of weird wording.
Yeah,
but
it is.
I guess technically it does contribute 2 mana to itself, so you only really need another 7.
Yeah.
9. Like, my problem is, it just feels like a lot of setup on this card. I think was the problem with it. Like, you got to get it out. You got to get a bunch of other things that happen to not be lands that have activated abilities. Then you get to make the backside of this thing, but then you still have to activate those cards, then be able to copy them. And it's like, what are we trying to do? Like,
we're trying to play Soul Ring in standard, man.
But my thing on this one is it feels a lot like I could win some other way before I got to do whatever it is I'm trying to do with this.
Yeah.
Right? Even if there is some type of 3 or 4 card combo with activated abilities and infinite mana or something, it's like, could I just have beaten you with like some random 3 or 4 card combo instead, that where each part is individually good? You know, I would love to be proven wrong by this one.
Oh yeah,
but I can't see this going into more than one very specific deck if somebody figures it out.
This one didn't end up on my list, and I think that's because I wasn't brave enough. I thought about it a lot. But that phrase just it keeps pounding in the back of my head. Like, this is the closest we're going to get to Soul Ring in standard, like ever. And it goes in a deck day one. It goes in Agatha Soul Cauldron, but you're right that's kind of it. But like, what else are you doing for it?
The Agatha decks really even need that?
Do they?
They're already able to combo with all the other. Like, there's at least 4 different combo decks people are playing with the Soul Cauldron already. So like, do they benefit by playing this?
Where's it? You know, do you have slots for it? I mean, I guess it's legendary, so you're going to play like 1, 2 tops. So like, you find room for the card, but I'm pretty sure the use case on it in Soul Cauldron is just Soul Ring. It's probably never going to do the other thing the card does, but that deck does generate infinite mana. So like, who cares if it costs 9 to flip over? Like, you got it, you know. And also it is literally Soul Ring in that deck. So like, it's powerful, but it's just that one deck. It is just that one deck. And I think in like 9 out of 10 games, it's not going to do the thing, you know? So I ultimately, like, it didn't end up on my list, but like, I 100% agree with your take. Like, all day.
The time it goes off, it's going to look brilliant. It's going to be great in the one deck it's in, but that's about it. Like, it's not doing much else other than that.
Yep.
At least not in standard, I don't think.
Well, probably not in standard. I think it has the least likelihood to do something beyond Soul Cauldron decks. But what is my number 9? Okay. I actually struggle with putting this one on the list because I do think this card's good. So just another reminder, doesn't mean the card's bad. And that's also why it's all the way up here at number 9, right? Poetic Ingenuity. This is the dinosaur enchantment. It costs 3 mana, 2 in a red. Whenever you cast it, whenever you get an artifact, you get a 3/1 dinosaur. And then whenever a dinosaur attacks, you get a treasure token. Now, the cool thing about this is that it's not whenever one or more dinos attack. It's whenever a dinosaur attacks, you get a treasure. So this could theoretically pay you back on curve 2 mana pretty easily. You know, 1-drop dino, 2-drop dino, 2 treasures when I attack that turn. So it's not like it does nothing when it comes into play, but And again, this is one of those that in Commander, if you're playing Dinos, I think you definitely add this card to your deck. Although, how many artifacts are you really playing? You know what I mean? But at the same time, in Standard, in the way the Dino deck is shaping up, I don't think you take off your turn 3 to play this card. Even if it pays you back a treasure or two, I don't think you play a 1-drop Dino. The only 1-drop that deck has is the Birds of Paradise that isn't a Dino. So this might, theoretically, this pays you back 1 treasure on turn 3 in the Dino deck. And I just don't think it's good enough. Next turn, it's probably only going to pay you 1 treasure too, because you didn't play a creature on turn 3. You played this instead. And your 2-drop had to survive its attack on turn 3. You know what I mean? You didn't just send it in to die so you get a free treasure. So yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Exactly what I thought about this card is that I think trying to put it into a dinosaur deck is a trap.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that's why I think it's perfect to be on the overrated list. I think a lot of people are going to try to squeeze it in, and that's not really where it goes. I mean, I think you're trying to play this in some artifact heavy build.
Maybe.
Where playing your artifacts just makes a body, and then if those dinosaurs live, you're just generating treasure every time you attack. Right? I think and maybe that's some, I don't know, food fight deck or something that wants to have a bunch of artifacts and then you're attacking and generating more treasure. Like, I don't know. There's probably something like that. But it's going to be in one of those types of build. Maybe the red-white decks that are already playing a bunch of artifacts so that you generate more bodies and more treasure. It's going to go. But even then, I built a couple of Boros artifact decks that were really good, and this card barely was even under consideration for more than a couple minutes. So
it costs too much. I mean, you play like Urbrass Forge or something like that. If you're going to play,
where this is going to live, honestly.
Yeah, me either. I do like that you pointed that out, that it's kind of a self-contained loop, because it makes dinosaurs. You swing with them, you get treasure. That's fun. And maybe in these like Boros decks that do already play Forge, but they also play like Sunfall and Depopulate and Farewell and like a million sweepers, but they also play stuff that gives them board presence, you know? Those decks are really fringe though.
Control deck with like red and artifacts that also plays the one that lets you draw and gives you a power stone at the end of turn.
Oh yeah, that thing. It's like for Visions of Phyrexia, I think it's called.
You go. Maybe there's some weird deck like that can use it, but it takes a lot of work.
Yeah, that's exactly the kind of build I'm thinking of, but those decks are like fringe at best.
Yeah.
So I see a lot of people freaking out about it because like dinosaurs, yay, but I think even for the deck that it looks like it goes in, it's kind of bad, and it's really slow rolly, even if you can manage to like get the loop going, you know.
Now, if we had some number of other like artifact dinosaurs, then maybe.
The only one I can think of is like Dino Automaton, and it's like very obviously just like a drafty. You know?
Yeah, that one's not great. I guess you technically could play the what is it? The 4/4 for 4. You choose a creature type, and activated abilities of those are less.
The Roaming Throne. You could do that. That's a good. I think that's actually a really, really good Magic card.
But even then, that's like your only artifact in the deck, so it's not really worth it.
Yeah,
like,
true.
Yeah, probably not. Probably not.
Yep. So with that said, on to your number 8, my friend. What's that going to be?
My 8. Watley, Poet of Unity.
Oh my God, thank you.
This is a 3-mana 2/3. Comes into play. You search for a land. It goes into your hand. I don't know why it doesn't go into play, but whatever. And then you can pay 5 and flip it to a backside that does a lot of cool stuff with dinosaurs. Makes bodies, gives your stuff the ability to tap for mana. You can search for a dinosaur, and then dinosaurs you have get double strike. My problem with the card is, while it looks really neat, it's just a 2/3 for 3.
That's all it is.
For a while, because you can't even flip it for at least 2 turns, in most cases. Because anything you play right now, you're probably using that mana to cast other things.
Yeah.
The other side of that is, you almost never realize the upside on the 4th chapter because your dinosaurs are probably dead by then.
Right.
I mean, you've either won or
it's not like they don't see it coming, you know?
Yeah, like, it's one or the other. You've either run them over with the dinosaurs you have, or they've just gotten rid of everything and you're still in the rebuilding phase again. So, and that's 4 turns away. That's the other thing, right? So you play Watley on 3. Let's say you did ramp up somehow or whatever, so you flip it on 4, and now you still got to wait 3 more turns. So it's turn 7 before you even get to the double strike thing.
Yeah.
Right? I don't know if that's... And again, what we were just talking about, I don't know if dinosaurs even want to take a turn off to play this on 3.
I don't think dinos do. No.
You got Hammer Skull, you've got Bronodon, you've got like just great cards you can play on 3. So why are we taking turn off to play Watley, right? I don't think that's what you want to do. So I think the biggest problem with this card for me is I just don't know where it goes.
I think slight pushback on this. Although remember I did start with being like, oh my god, thank you, because I do think this card is slightly overrated. I agree with you, but I guess that my points here are that this doesn't go in dinosaurs. This goes in a deck that incidentally plays a dinosaur too, because like you can go get an Atali with this trigger. You don't even have to be in a dinosaurs deck. It gives you 2 dinosaurs for the last chapter to benefit. So again, you don't necessarily have to have a bunch of dinosaurs in your deck. I think this goes more in a Naya mid-range deck. So if we can get Naya mid-range to work, which is not a color combination I think is great. I also think it doesn't necessarily have to be Naya. If I'm not mistaken, the transform cost is red-white hybrid.
Correct.
So it could go in Selesnya, it could go in Gruul, or it could go in Jund, or something, you know what I mean? It could go in Teamer.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So you could play a deck that actually has like removal and counter spells and the ability to play this card. So I think it goes in a more mid-rangey list that again incidentally plays an important dinosaur or 2, i.e. Atali. The other thing is that this card, I think when you do all the math, like not even counting like the last mode that doesn't actually get you a card, but if you do all the math, I think this card is technically a 5-for-1.
Yeah, if you count the tokens and
Yeah, 2 tokens, go get a card, and go get a land. Go get a dinosaur, go get a land. Plus the body on the battlefield. So I think it's a 5-for-1, and that's so much for 3 mana. Like, I know it's not 3. I know it's 8.
Want it to be.
Yeah, it's 8 mana to get all the benefits. And I think that's the worst part of the card, is that people forget that, like, nobody really plays these, like, transform, that sorcery speed for 5 mana. We had a bunch of these in the last set. Like, none of them really see play.
Yeah, I think so. Like, we play like the Phyrexians or whatever because they all have cool abilities when they come into play. Right?
They're all really good on their front side.
Makes your opponent sack something. Vorinclex goes, finds 2 lands, and then flips into craziness, right?
Yeah.
Like those just have higher impact when you're spending 5 mana to do something. And I was just wondering, like for 3, we're getting a smaller body than anything else most of the decks want to play on 3 anymore. And you're also putting a land into your hand instead of into play. Whereas other cards that cost 3 are generally putting it right into play, even if it's like a Topiary Stomper.
I was going to say, I think that if this put the land into play, it would probably be, not always, but it'd be a better ish Topiary Stomper.
Then you go from 3, put the land into play, you're already at 4.
5 next turn.
Now you flip it and get 2 dinosaurs. Yep. Upside, great. And I think that's why there's a lot of hype around this card. Because just like you're saying, it's a 5-for-1. I can have my whole board tapped for 3 colors. I can go find whatever big dinosaur. Like, those are all great things. Just how often do we really get to do them and have them matter?
Yeah, how often is that realistic? Probably not very often. So where are we? Number 8? Number 8. So it should be quick. Number 8 is a card that I think sometimes, let me set things up like this. Sometimes I think that people look at a card that's really going to be great in Commander, and some folks tend to extrapolate that out to other formats. And obviously not everyone does this, but I think it happens more with some cards than others. And in this set, one of those cards, I think the one that exemplifies that almost the most is Chaimil, the Inner Sun. This is the 6-mana artifact. Spells you control can't be countered, discovers 5 every turn. I think this card is kind of awful.
Didn't make my list, but I think this is one where like I'm right in the middle on this one.
Okay. Huh. It's like I don't like that it can be countered. I really wish it said that it could not be countered.
And that's one of the reasons I'm right in the middle.
Okay. And you just blow it up with a Besage or whatever, like whatever blows up artifacts. There's a braid. There's like a million. There's a lot more than people give it credit for. I think it's easier to blow up enchantments than artifacts in like Best of One, but there's still a number of things that blow up artifacts. So I think like this card is fragile. It costs way too much. It does kind of try to pay for itself the first turn it comes into play, but like I can't tell you how many times during early access I discovered 5 with different cards and got like a 1-drop. So I just don't think it's going to be very good. It's about all I have to say about it, because I've seen people say they're excited about it in like sweeper decks, and I don't see it either.
It's a tough one, because I do agree it'd be nice if the card itself didn't get exiled or get countered. I mean, maybe even if it had like hexproof or something, just to guarantee it stays around, but whatever. I think you could build around it a little bit, because even in dinosaurs, like you can play the paleontologist, so if you do hit that, you can still use dinosaurs from a yard, stuff like that. Like there's some way to get extra value out of it.
That thing is cracked in half, dude. Paleontologist, cool. Whew. Yeah, sorry to interrupt. It's just
no, it's totally worth it. Even if you're just using it as a graveyard removal tool and using it as a multi-mana creature, it's fine.
It also does that. Like, it's very good.
No, but Shamil, I think, is playable, but not a superstar. You know, I think it's one of those ones that I think even in one of my dinosaur builds, I made room for like a one of, just all right. If I draw this late, it's a way for me to rebuild the board without doing a lot of extra work. The downside though is, I think on a lot of these artifacts, it's just going to be, how does the metagame shift, right? Because if I can tell you the Boros and mono white artifacts list are playable and they are good.
They're fast. Yeah, so they're really fast.
If those become a thing, everybody's going to start playing Abrades. Everybody's going to start playing all these, green creatures that kill artifacts. So then something like this is going to have a lot less ceiling on it.
Yeah.
It's going to be hard to get your value. You know what would have been good about this card? As if the card itself had Discover.
Oh, like you discover when it comes into play.
When it comes into play.
Yeah.
Like get one that comes into play, one in the turn. So you maybe realize some significant value immediately.
That you actually get like mana out of it, sort of. You know?
Something. But
that'd be great.
It's fine, but definitely overhyped. I agree with you. I think it's going to be great in Commander, probably, like just like you're saying. I think it's going to get a lot of sales from that. I think a lot of people. Those builds.
This is definitely a Commander card.
Yeah, it's gonna be tough in 60 card to play more than even one of these in your list a lot of time.
Oh yeah, I could see sneaking one of in a deck that has Farewells and Sunfalls and stuff, and like maybe, but you get like a free Wandering Emperor off of it sometimes. And, it's good, but a one of.
Or what is that? The new the white artifact that kills everything, but you choose a power.
Unstable Glyph Bridge. That thing is a monster, man. Yeah. The prison on the other side of it is nuts.
There's a few things you could hit.
But I think we're on number 7. What is your number 7, sir?
My number 7 is probably going to surprise you. This is not even a rare. It's not even a mythic, but River Herald Scout.
I totally agree.
1/2, enters the battlefield, explores. That's it. That's the tech.
Yep.
The thing is, I started with this in my Merfolk list and just realized I almost never liked this card.
Yeah.
It was either a junky 1/2 that put a land into my hand, or it was a 2/3 for 2, which, okay, that's fine.
It's not great.
A bunch of 2/3s for 2s that have upside or have any additional ability for roughly the same cost, right? So it ended up not making the cut. I tried different builds with it. I saw a bunch of other people's Merfolk lists with it. And unless you're going hard on the Explore, which there's probably still a build that does, but in my experience, going super heavy on the Explorer was not the best way to win with Merfolk right now. It was a lot of like, use the pilgrimage, make the tokens, use the schooner, so you can trigger Explore again on a thing. And
the schooner was good.
Doing a lot of
I was interested in Subterranean Schooner.
It was how I made Merfolk work. It wasn't with the Scout. But those are also two things that take up the 2-mana slot, right?
Right.
In the same spot this would be in. Whoa. So it's weird. It seems like it should work. But at the end of the day, if this was a 2/2 that could possibly be a 3/3 with no other text, I think would be really cool. But as a 1/2, I wasn't excited by it.
Yeah, I think that this teaches us some things. Merfolk Branchwalker is the better card. It's from the original Ixalan. It's the exact same thing, but the PT switched. And it's green, I guess that matters too. But, that card was much more likely to trade in combat, whether or not it explored. But, if it does explore and get a counter, then you can trade up pretty easily with 3 toughness stuff because it's got 3 power now. But even if it doesn't get the counter, if it draws you a card, it's still like a 2-mana 2-power guy that drew you a card, which is really good.
Exactly.
This dude, like, his stats are never going to be impressive for the mana cost. The fact that he drew you a card, like a 2-mana 1/2 that draws you a card, like, okay. But when that card is always a land, it's less impressive. Yeah. I could see maybe this dude with like the 2-mana Merfolk guy that's a legend. Whenever you explore a land, you get to ramp it into play or something. Like, that seems good.
Again,
but
those are both 2-mana things.
Yeah, exactly. They're both 2-mana guys. You can't play them on curve, really.
No,
Maybe
honestly, the card, surprisingly, I was playing Deeper Wayfinder in that spot, and at least it's had an upside.
Yeah.
Right? It's a 2/3 always that can set up my explorers.
It can ramp you, kind of.
Exactly.
No.
So, and that just worked out better for me.
I could totally agree. Because there's more 2-drop Merfolk than you think, and depending on what list you're playing, you want to play like Voldalian Hex Mage or Hex Catcher or whatever it's called.
Yeah.
You want to play it in every Merfolk list. It's a Anthem effect. So it's just really not a whole lot of slots in that deck, and it depends on how you want to build it. So I'm not sure Merfolk is... I think Fish probably got the worst deal out of all the Typal decks.
I'll tell you this. My assessment was... Of the 4 groups in Ixalan, it had the lowest rate of individually powerful or useful cards.
Agreed.
Like,
Agreed.
You're gonna find very
Tishana's Tidebinder is probably the only one that's like way up here.
Yeah, Tidebinder and the other 3-mana one, the 3/4 with Vigilance that makes a map every time you attack.
Okay. I was worried that guy wasn't great, so I'm glad that he's good.
Those are the only 2 that I would say could show up in non-Merfolk lists regularly.
Yeah.
But I think where Merfolk excel is if you can get 2 or 3 cards out there together, then they kind of snowball and can really get out of hand, right?
Yeah.
So I have a build that worked out pretty well. For anybody watching, already video up. You can go check that out.
Check that out.
Realistically, of the 4, this was the one I was probably the least excited about because there's kind of only 1, maybe 2 ways to build it effectively, whereas I think the others have a lot more flexibility.
So number 7 on my list is Veto Fanatic of Ixalan. I think this will probably surprise a lot of people. Coming from me, because, I like to sacrifice guys. I love aristocrats and Ellis Core. We're getting married. The jokes. They're fun bits. But, like, this guy, just costs way too much mana. The first time Veto triggers, you get to gain 2 life. I don't really care that much. The second time he triggers, they lose 2 life. So I had to pay twice as much and sacrifice twice as many things for the same effect as Vron. Which I don't love. And then if you sacrifice 3 things in the same turn, you get a 4/3. But after I got off stream, early access, I tried the Aristocrats deck with, Ellis Core and Bartholomew and like all the Market Gnome, Greedy Freebooter, all that stuff. And Veto is I want that Aristocrats deck to be one where you just like sacrifice 4 guys in the same turn every turn, but like just realistically, it's not that. Even with Resolute Reinforcements and Wedding Announcement and the rat, the 3-mana rat that gives you a Skitter, Lord Skitter.
Yeah.
He gives you a creature every single turn. Even with all these like token makers in Standard, there's just not enough dudes to go around. It's really hard to get Veto to trigger the way you want him to every turn. And you could play a card like Ratadrabic instead, the thing that makes your legends, when they die, they come back as 2/2 tokens that aren't legendary. That card is more or less, I've decided, necessary in the Aristocrats deck. And you just don't have all the room in the world for 4s. So I want this guy to be good, but now after a little bit of playing, he's so expensive, man, and he's hard to set up the turn that you play him to.
Here's the thing I would say, because I had him in a couple of lists, even some quirky vampire lists ended up cutting it at the end of the day. So I agree with you. I think the problem is, there's other things for 4 mana that do better than what it's trying to do.
Yeah.
Right? Like if you just played Bloodletter of Ixalan in that spot.
I was gonna mention that card.
You drain them for 4 instead of 2.
Yep.
Right? So that's just better than the 2 you were going to get off of them, right? Or even just playing Shieldred Steel is still just going to be better than playing that guy in more cases.
Yeah, that's the elephant in the room right there. Is you brought it up, is like when you see a 4-mana card with black in the mana cost, you just have to think, well, is it better than Shieldred? And like, Shieldred doesn't actually do anything technically, like synergistically, if that's even a word, for the sacrifice decks. but you still play it because it's just really, really powerful.
Well, like I said, though, I'm not even sure Veto's better than Bloodletter.
I think Bloodletter is probably better than Veto in that deck, especially if you can engineer sacks the same turn that you play, like on turn 4. If I can play Bloodletter and then sack like a wedding announcement token and the greedy freebooter to the Bartholomew with an Ellison Ilcor or something, that's impossible to make happen on turn 4. It's not, well, I guess it's close to impossible. But all I'm saying is if you get like 2 sacrifices with an Ellis Ilcor in play on turn 4, then that's, 4 damage. If you have a Vron in play, that's 4 damage as well because it only triggers once. So you're right that I think that setting up big damage turns in Aristocrats is just better with Bloodletter than it is with Veto. Like all day, which is
crazy to say. Like that means at best, Veto can be the 3rd best thing in the type of deck it wants to be in.
Seriously, and like
that's at best. There's probably something else I'm not even thinking of right now. But like,
and that's true. And it's the only card of the 3 cards we've named that costs 4 mana that like is specialized to specifically. It's designed to go in this deck, and it still doesn't really. There's just better options. So. That's all I really have to say about Veto. I think some people will be surprised, but if this card costs 3 mana and like fudge with the stats a little bit or something, but if this card costs 1 less mana, I think it'd be in the conversation. But at 4, I think it's priced out. So, we're on number 6. What is your number 6?
This is funny because I'm doing back-to-back Merfolk here. Nezel, current Conductor.
Oh, this is the 2 mana guy, right?
Yeah, this is weird to say this. So this is one of the ones where I don't want anybody to think I'm saying this card's trash, because it's not. I actually played it, enjoyed it. So I just want that to be clear. But it is a 2/3. Whenever you explore, it also gets a +1/+1. And then if you explore into a land, you can put that land into play, which is all great.
Seems good.
The problem with it is a lot of times end up just being a big body. Right, it gets to be a 5 or a 6 power, and it's kind of just there. Right, I ended up chump blocking with this more than I did attacking with it.
Yeah,
which was very weird. Not that I hated it, because it was still kind of ramping you up a lot of times and allowing you to play 2 or 3 things on the following turn. So that was kind of cool. So I was never mad at this card existing. It was just like it made me think like, what do I need to do to a card like this to make it better?
Yeah.
Like, having a creature that you're putting +1/+1s on and then like maybe attacking with it sometimes that just like doesn't feel great.
Part of me wants to say like, there's other formats that have like Wild Growth Walker where this goes in like the Explore deck along with Wild Growth Walker and does work. But even then, like, what are you going to do? You play Wild Growth Walker on turn 2, you're going to play this on turn 3, and like you're still setting up on turn 3 in Pioneer, you're dead, So I'm not even sure that this goes in Explore decks in other formats.
No, I think it's fine for standard Merfolk. I think, I mean, my list, I'm pretty sure still played a full set of 4. And I was never mad that I had the card, but I think people were looking at this card, at least from the discussions I saw from people who really wanted to play Merfolk, was that, oh, this is exactly the card we need. This is going to make the deck good. And it was like, the deck was actually good because of the Hexcatcher, Pilgrimage, Schooner, like it was
all the little guys,
that were leading to the wins more than this card. Not that I would ever take this card out, because again, that ramp ability is good. Sometimes just having a big blocker against dinosaurs or whatever is fine, right? But it wasn't the card that made the deck, being the legendary representative of that group, which is kind of weird.
I think a lot of people have dreams that they're going to like play this on 2 and then explore twice on 3 and just drop 2 lands into play, and like it's just not going to work. Yeah. There's ways to make the Explore deck work, but A, there have to be like actual things you want to ramp into in Simic. And there's not a whole lot right now. And B, you have to be better than the stock ramp deck in Standard Domain ramp, and it's just not. It's too fragile compared to that deck, and we just got like. Go ahead.
For just regular Merfolk, this card's fine. Yeah. In Standard Merfolk, it's okay. It's just don't think because you have it in your opening hand, this is going to be the way I win.
Right.
Like
right.
You might get it to big enough where you're really attacking and doing stuff later on, but it's not. Even on turn 2, I didn't always want it because of the existence of, cut downs and whatever.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of times where I'm like, okay, let me play this on 3 or 4 where I know I can explore right after I play it.
Yes.
And then build it up and then maybe do some stuff.
Yeah, so. Guarantee some value the turn it drops. I like that idea.
Yeah,
maybe it isn't your 2-drop.
Than you think it would.
It's like you think you want to play it on 2 as quickly as possible so you get as much value out of your explorers that game as possible. But it makes plenty of sense in today's standard to drop it on a turn you can guarantee value. That makes sense. But, as far as a ramp card especially, like that's the thing that I think is definitely overrated on this, is that I see people saying it's a great ramp card because, it's a 2-mana ramper that gets you more than one piece of ramp for just 2 mana. But again, it's fragile. Like, we just got rampant growth in this set.
Yeah,
we got an almost rampant growth reprint, right? And like, this is unbelievable. Like, the rampant growth is unbelievable, like compared to a card like this. So I agree. My number 6 is Amalia Benavides Aguirre. This is the thing that everyone says goes in Soul Sisters. 2 mana, 2/2, ward, pay 3 life. And then whenever you gain life, it explores. And then when its power gets to 20, you destroy all the other creatures. Look, I love Soul Sisters. It's actually like my favorite modern deck. And this is a perfect card for that deck. And I still don't think it goes in. What do you take out? What do you take out of Soul Sisters? In standard, I was just wishing that we had more life gain payoffs, but like, it's still just life gain and it's still just explore. It's never going to get to 20 power. You should just put that mode on the card out of your mind. So what we actually have here is like a 2 mana 2/2 that only pays off every now and again. And I don't know, man. I'm really, really low on this card compared to most others, I think.
Here's the thing, right? We have oh gosh, why am I forgetting names today? The Spirit Cleric, that every time you gain a life, put a counter on it. When it has 4, it gains flying. When it has 10, it gets indestructible, right?
Oh, yeah, Voice of the Blessed. Yeah.
Yeah, like, that thing only sometimes got to 10 counters.
Yeah.
And that triggers every time you gain life, period.
And that was when the life gain deck was good in standard, It's
going to sometimes get a +1/+1. So what are the odds it really gets to 20?
Yeah.
And this is when I reviewed this card. One of the things I mentioned is I would almost rather that destroy all other creatures thing just be some other line of text.
Yeah. Yep.
Anything, right? When you get to a certain life, you get to draw a bunch of cards whatever, right? Because you've probably killed your opponent, realistically.
Long before
something has happened to this card, long before it gets to 20 power.
It's like, it's supposed to be the kind of card, design-wise, it looks like the kind of card where, like, as your opponent, like, that thing's going to kill me if I let it get to that amount of power. But, so there's pressure, there's a clock, But if I target it with removal, it's going to deal 3 damage to me because it has ward, pay 3 life, right? So there's a tension there. But it's not actually that much tension when the clock is like 12 turns away, and all I have to really do is sunfall it away. Like, I predict that the ward will almost never be paid on this. Like, all I have to do is let this 2/2 stay out. And like, I know sometimes it's going to explore and be like a 4/4 eventually. So like, the clock matters before you get to the blow up all other stuff mode. But I still think that the clock isn't pressing as much as sort of design wanted it to,
Yeah,
so
and don't get me wrong. If I'm playing a life gain deck, I'll still play like 2 copies of this. Because, getting to explore is great, just because if I'm either putting lands in my hand or setting up my draw. So
like gain life kind of draw cards. Okay.
Yeah, like I'm okay with that. And it'll probably get to be a 4/4 or 5/5 if it lives, and that's fine. So yeah, it still has a place, but I'm with you. I don't think it's just automatically I'm gaining all this life and I need to be playing this card and whatever. Like, maybe you find room for 1 or 2. It's legendary, so it's got that going against it.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, it's playable. But I'm with you. It's not a superstar.
I will say that. Like I said, I was really low on this card compared to everybody else, but that doesn't mean I don't think it's like playable in a narrow thing. But that's it. It's very narrow. It's a life gain trigger. So it doesn't gain life. Nothing on this card actually gains life. So really, really narrow. Not sort of self-sustaining in any way. Just not very high on it. So what is... Oh, wow, we're halfway. We're about an hour in and we're halfway. What is your number 5?
This is literally the one on the list I get blown up for. I had to have at least one, and I figured I would sit it right at the halfway mark. So if people want to just pause and get ready to yell at me, here we go. But Bartal de Presidio.
Oh!
I know. Like,
it's so good.
Hear me out, though. Like,
so good.
Card's totally playable. Totally playable. And it will have a home. There are sacrifice decks that want it. There are aristocrats decks that want it. On board with it. However, and myself included, I think I've initially tried to shove this into too many lists that it doesn't necessarily belong in. I think I even tried squeezing into vampires and whatever, and it was fine, but I didn't necessarily want it more than other things I could be doing in that slot. Like stuff like Harvester and things are still really good.
Yeah.
Playing the 2/1 flyer that makes your extra blood tokens is still really good because it flies, right? If this had almost anything, you almost can't give it anything else though for 2 mana is the problem.
Yeah,
right?
that's
it
the
already
thing.
does a lot for what it does.
Yeah.
But there were games even against me. It was like, all right, so you got a 4/5. Great, I'll just jump it. You know, right? Like, I wasn't really afraid unless they had all the parts to drain my life or something, you know, from other sacrifice abilities. I wasn't really worried about the card. I think it's good. And again, I think I'm still going to play it, still going to be in some lists. But I did go back after the early access event and take it out of a couple of lists because I'm like, you know, this was cool, but I'm not going to get the upside I want that often. This should just be something more versatile in this spot.
Yeah. Like in Vampires, I think you're right that like Blood Tithe Harvester is just always going to be the better card.
Yeah.
I only played this card in Aristocrats. And I probably played like 12 games or something like that with Aristocrats. So not the biggest sample size, but like some, you know. And this card is weird because you need this card for your deck to function. Yeah. But you almost, no matter how big it gets, I almost never attacked with this guy. The idea is that the threat of activation when you attack with him is really high. So like, oh, I can block that guy, but my opponent's going to sack like 3 dudes. Right, so I can double block him, but they still have enough guys to sacrifice to like kill both guys I double block with and keep their Bart. That is the situation we saw ourselves in with Aristocrats. The last time Aristocrats was popular, which was like the last time Zulaport Cutthroat was playable in Standard. You know, we had big things like Rally the Ancestors at the end of the curve. We have stuff like Nantuko Husk-S cards that have technically the turn that you activated a higher threat of activation. With a card like Husk, you only need to sacrifice 2 guys to get +4/+4. With Bart, to get above those double blocks, you need to sacrifice like 4 guys, and it's just not happening.
Not just that, but Standard's hostile to attackers right now.
Very. Like, yeah, if you attack with Bart, it doesn't matter how many dudes you have to sack if they have like Emperor or whatever.
You know, the new artifact to like deal 5 to a tapped creature or whatever.
That thing's really good. Saw blades. So
there's sometimes you're just like, I don't even want to put this at risk because I need everything else it does for my deck, right? Sacking the Evangelist so I can get an extra bat, and you know, this other thing so I can sack a treasure, and so that was my issue. Just like, I probably just need this to be a more versatile creature.
Yeah,
more often than not.
It's like that's the problem with the Aristocrats deck is like you need this effect, you must have it, but like it's basically it plays like an enchantment that dies to go for the throat. Which is not great, you know, especially when it steps on the toes of all your other stuff. You want to play Illisil Core on 2. You want to play Vron on 2. You want to play Resolute Reinforcements on 2 with Flash. And it's just like, I haven't found the proper way to sequence all these. Like, which thing do you need on 2 the most? You know what I mean? Which thing can you throw away on 2 if it's going to die to removal anyway? You know, do I keep the Bart in my hand? Do I keep the Ellis? So there's definitely things that are like skill issues on my part, but you really can't get around the fact
that it has to go in some builds. Like it's a free sacrifice effect.
Yeah,
it's just too good to give up in some lists.
But even after playing, go ahead.
No, you go for it.
Even after playing that deck for like 12 games or so, like the best cards in that deck are Market Gnome and Greedy Freebooter.
Market Gnome is grossly good.
Market Gnome is disgusting. It's so good, but like Bart, you need him, but he's not as good as I want him to be either. So I actually fully support this take. You know,
it's definitely in some of my lists and definitely get played. But again, I think it's just where the hype was at an 11. And I was almost with her, man. I was like at a 9.5 or a 10. So, I mean, I was up there with you. But after having used it, I'm like, you know, maybe we're closer to a 7.5.
Yeah. Right. My number 5, interestingly, is also the card that I think is going to get me in some trouble. There's a few on the list like that. and oddly, I don't think that we've really had too many cards that were the same yet on our list.
No, not really, just
so
one.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
But my number 5 is a card we actually mentioned a couple entries ago. It's Bloodletter of Aclazotz.
Fair.
Again, the reason this card is smack dab, like directly in the middle of my list, is because I really think this card is going to see play It's probably going to be a treasured commander card forever. But even in like constructed competitive environments, I think that this is going to see play even in some other formats. I think it has a chance in Pioneer. It obviously, just on to the cons, it's obviously the same mana cost, same mana value at least as Sheoldred. Nobody's saying you can't play 2 4-drops in your deck. No one's saying that. But this is obviously like just as fragile as Sheoldred. It does do something the turn it comes into play, theoretically, at least in like a mono black aggro deck or something.
Yeah, you're attacking with something,
Yeah, if you're attacking, Graveyard Trespasser, can hit him for 6 or whatever. It's gross. So not only can Graveyard Trespasser hit him for 6, but also like the attack trigger on Graveyard Trespasser hits for double, and that's gross. So I do like this card. I just really want to stress that I like this card. I'm excited to play it. I think it's going to be good in multiple decks. And if anything, not necessarily kicks Sheoldred out of the 4-drop slot, but like shares that 4 slot with it, I think it'll be this card. But I am nowhere near as high on it as a lot of people are. It does, I'm sorry, I know this is cliched, but like it does die to removal. It dies to most removal spells played in Standard right now. And I just, you could say the same thing about Sheoldred, but Sheoldred punishes your opponent for playing Magic. Yeah, just, whereas this forces you to play Magic. Whereas the good thing about Sheoldred is that like it's going to do the thing just as a matter of course. They have to draw cards. You have to draw cards to play the game. So, I just think that this is not, in terms of, you can use the same argument for Sheoldred. Well, Sheoldred dies to removal too, and it's the most played creature in Standard. Yeah, I agree, but this doesn't do the thing Sheoldred does on just sitting there.
Honestly, the life gain from Sheoldred is sometimes the most problematic thing.
It really is, dude.
I mean, really, people get so worried about, it's draining my 2 life every turn. But really, it's just like, if now it's sitting there with this big 4/5, and they've managed to gain 4 or 6 life
6
by the time to get rid of it.
Seriously.
It's like, that's the problem.
It's a whole new game,
Yeah, if it was just the life gain, or life drain, I think that would be fine.
In some ways, yeah.
Yeah.
If it was just the clock.
I'm with you on this one. I think it kind of has the same issue that Bartholomew did from whenever I was, at least during the streamer event, right? I think people were putting this into so many lists, right? Because everybody wanted to see the big double damage thing or whatever.
Yeah.
It just doesn't go into every list. Like now, I can see if you're doing some type of true mono black aggro, right? A bunch of small things and you're pinging your opponent and whatever. And then even when you play this, you're going to get some incremental damage. That's probably fine. Maybe some Rakdos list where you're using the anvil and whatever, so like you're getting extra damage off those triggers.
Could be like awesome.
That probably works, but I don't think you just go, okay, I'm just shoving this into a list because it's cool and it's technically a 4/4 flyer because it's going to deal 4 instead of 2. But if it connects. But if your opponent has a flyer that blocks it, well, you're only dealing 2, not 4, right?
Exactly, that's an issue. Yeah.
So that is a thing. So I mean, it's a neat card though. But I'm with you. I think it's another one where the hype was real high. And again, instead of being a 10, it's probably like a 6.5 or
7-ish. I think that like the card obviously is going to do stuff. I am sick of seeing like every set. It seems like there's a 4-drop for Anvil that like, this is the thing that's going to make Anvil playable, and it never is. Like we got the Obnixilis a couple of sets ago that like is ridiculous in Anvil. Did nothing. Did literally nothing. So like,
here's the problem too, right? Again, how we were trying to put this and Veto in the same slot. If you're even talking about the Anvil decks, the O'Hare Oxenil, the red god, is better than this.
Unbelievable. Right? It makes your Anvils do 4
damage.
Yeah, like sick. That's actually a really good use case for O'Hare Oxenil.
It's like, okay, so does this even make the cut in that list? Or do you play it just for redundancy? Since the other one's legendary, you play like 2 or 3 of that, and you play 2 or 3 of this, right? Maybe. I don't know. Yeah,
that's a good point, too, I guess, in favor of this card, is that it's not legendary. So, it isn't Sheoldred. You can play 4 of this or whatever. I get that. But that's another thing that I'm getting sick of is like the 4-drops in black that are going to unseat Sheoldred. They never do. Archfiend of the Dross, the 6/6 flying.
As long as, again, we're going to extend this out another year, in Standard, every single slot, you're just fighting for space, right? Especially at 3, 4, 5. Like,
absolutely.
In every deck, there's multiple 3s, 4s, and 5s you want to play. And, like, not everything can make the cut, right? You're not playing 8 or 12 of everything in those slots. Like, something's got to go. Yeah, so that's going to be the tough spot. I think this kind of leads into these overrated lists, too, is what are they getting to replace, if anything?
Yeah.
Or do they just get beat out of those slots, you know?
I think that happens here because I don't know what you replace with, especially like in a format like Standard right now where it's like mono red on one side and like soldiers on the aggro side, and you've got like domain ramp. Like the only real mid-rangey deck in the format is Esper. It's really good, but it runs counter spells against the ramp decks and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so like when you look at mid-rangey-ish cards like this, you have to be able to beat a number of decks that I don't think this card actually beats. Maybe it's fast enough to make the clock against ramp work. Maybe it's fast enough on turn 4 to make the clock against aggro work, but I'm just not convinced.
I'm just saying, like in the Esper mid-range or like Esper Legends, like maybe you can play one or two of. Maybe. Just to like have that big attack, because you do have a decent flyer with like Rafine or whatever that can connect for a bunch. So like, possibly
that's
reasonable.
cute actually, because Rafine connives and becomes like a 7-something and then gets in for 14. Like that's
or if you use the Disturb on the 2/3 guy, right? He comes back as a 3/2 flyer, like that's fine.
Yeah,
and then that connects for 6. So like there's some reasonable spots for it, I guess.
These are good calls. I like all that. But I'm not sure that it stacks up. I will say, to your point, though, that we've just proven with, like, Invoke Despair for the last couple of years. It did get banned and all, but, like, you can play cards like that with all those, like, black pips. You can play those in 3-color decks, and it's not a big deal, so...
Yeah, be aware that we have 4 cycles, I believe, of 2-color lands.
Dual lands,
everybody can play. So, like, well, most decks. Everybody has at least 3. Some of them have 4. So, like... And you still have the tri-lands, and you got whatever. So, like, color doesn't matter that much.
Not really, yeah. This could be 5 black pips, and, like, you'd probably make it work in Esper somehow, you know? But
maybe.
Let's see. What is your number 4?
Number 4. I cheated on this one.
Oh.
Caves as a group. Just Caves, the deck. Like, I couldn't really narrow it down to one cave, but... Caves as a group. I think it's still playable, but I think a lot of people want this to be Gates all over again. You hear that a lot in discussions, like, oh, it's just like the Gates deck, but with Caves. And I was like, go back and look at the Gates deck, right? There were things that let you search for Gates. There were Gates that were killing stuff when they come into play. Like, your lands were doing all this other stuff that some of these aren't really doing. Now, admittedly, having some lands in this one that can become 3/3s, and there's some cool stuff you can do with, like, the Tortoise or whatever, all fine and good. But I don't know, like, and honestly, there's sometimes I'm even with the sweeper, with the cave in, I still see some of those decks are just going to get run over by hyper aggro decks.
Yeah.
Right? You know, get you down to 6 or 7 life and then just slowly ping you with some burn damage or whatever, right? That's going to happen a lot in those matchups. Like, I don't know if they have much resistance against the mid-rangey decks with, like, the Planeswalkers and whatever. Like, you're probably just going to lose to weird stuff if you play Caves, is what it feels like.
Yeah, we played, I will say this for Caves. We played Caves for 3 games, lowest possible sample size, right? But we played Caves for 3 games on stream for the early access, and the only deck we lost to was another Caves deck. I don't think, though, to your point, I will agree with you on this. I think that there are strong lines for the Caves deck.
Yes.
But I think Domain Ramp is the better deck.
Absolutely. And that was the other half of my argument.
Yeah.
like if that's what you want to do, you're better off playing the domain deck. The individual cards are just stronger, right?
They are.
Whereas
yeah.
With like Caves, I feel there's going to be a lot of spots where they're just going to counter one key card and you're going to lose.
Just
right?
kaput.
Or they have one discard spell and you're going to lose. Whereas the domain decks are like, all right, you got rid of that, cool. Well, I'm casting Atraxa next.
Yeah, I mean, right.
Or I got this big thing that normally be hard to remove. It's like, well, I'm going to get rid of that for 1 mana with my Leyline, right? Like,
yeah,
they just have better tools than you have. Like, it takes so much for the Gates deck to do what it's going to do. And admittedly, and I get that, you know, some people are winning with it in early access, but we're also not playing hone deck, right? That are
early access just doesn't count.
We're not playing the extra make disappears and whatever. And that adds a different layer to that. I think Caves will still be playable, for sure. But I don't think it's the same as the Gates deck was that people want it to be.
Well, I think there's a build for Caves out there, but I don't think that it necessarily looks like the builds that we saw during early access.
Totally.
I will say that Cave-In, whatever it's called, Calamitous Cave-In, the sweeper, was very strong.
Oh, sure.
Sunfall also goes in that deck, so like it gets a few different sweepers. Depending on what you play, you're still like ramping into Sunfall, and there's ways to ramp into even Calamitous Cave-In against smaller sort of aggro decks. You're only doing like 3 damage with it some of the time on turn 3, but like you can still do it. It's still a Brotherhood's End, right? Or Anger of the Gods, whatever. The problem I hit with the Gates deck is that it doesn't have enough real win conditions.
Yep.
What it wants to do is either some of them cast a Tally or a Traxa, some of them, which I think you're losing to the domain decks if you try to do the same thing they're doing because they do it better.
Yeah, that's my problem because they're just ramping up faster with the Topiary Stompers and the
Battle,
yeah, like
Zendikar, whatever it is.
Yeah,
that's just an unbelievable card. So I think that the 5 mana ramp 3 that Caves has is like really, really good, but it does put you a turn behind Domain. It's cool to get to 8 mana on the next turn after you cast the Cave ramp card, but like, why do you need to? You know what I mean? Like the Domain ramp gets to 7 on turn 4 and wins the game. So can you do that?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I think that even though if you're running like 4 Calamitous Cave-In, 4 Sunfall, you are like fairly well prepared, but that deck doesn't draw cards very well. So it's got that issue, you know, it doesn't play out of its graveyard very well unless you run like Shigeki, which I saw a few people doing. So again, I think there's a good like build for this deck, but we have to find it. And I think even when you do find like the optimal build, probably not better than Ramp.
Yeah,
honestly.
And the other thing is too, I'm not sure it's well positioned against something like the White or Boros artifact decks, right?
Yeah.
Where they don't care about you having the Cave-In because they're like, sweet, I'm just gonna make another big like 10/10 next turn.
Next turn with the Thousand Moon Smithy or whatever.
Yeah, like they don't care.
That card is cracked.
I'm turning lands into creatures and attacking, and then like you don't have instant speed removal, and you know like just weird things. I like. That was my problem watching the Caves deck in action is I kept thinking like, well, if your opponent even just has this one card, you probably can't win that.
Well, that is, I will say, one big advantage to Caves is that you just talked about the game plan of like getting through with creature lands in the late game and winning. And like that's the thing that Caves does best.
For sure.
So it does have that option, but again, it really has to be better than some of the things that are already happening in Standard, you know? So I worry.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think that's...
So I agree.
You can do the Cave thing and be fine, but would you be better off just playing Domain and having individually more powerful cards?
A lot of the Cave stuff looks fun. Like Bat Cavern is really fun. I played it a bunch of times.
Yeah.
It's a fun card, you know, but like there's a line, even with good fun cards, there's a line between like good and optimal. And it's just, I agree. I don't think it's optimal. So, where are we? Number 4. We're on number 4.
Yep. Number 4.
My number 4 is Helping Hand, the new Unearth.
Ooh.
And Unearth is actually like kind of one of my favorite cards of all time. And Helping Hand is technically a strictly worse Unearth that breaks the color pie. It doesn't cycle, brings creature in tapped. And that said, there are some pros to this. I see people talking about it with like Guardian of the Great Door in Standard, the 2 mana 4/4 flying angel that can't actually attack until you tap a bunch of things. Or you can't cast it until you tap a bunch of things, so you Helping Hand it into play on turn 2. There's lines that I see with this card, but honestly, I don't think this card is very good. I wish I had more arguments, but unless, first of all, you have to engineer a situation where this card is good on like turn 2. You know, I heard Saffron Olive call this card Dark Ritual, but like you have to do so much work. Your deck has to be built such a specific way.
Yeah.
And in white too, which is like kind of hard to do. To make this good early enough in the game that it matters. I think that in a mid-range deck where it brings back like Extraction Specialist and that brings back something else and you still have so much mana left over, like there's use cases for the card. But I think in terms of like generating a bunch of mana quickly, it's actually not very good.
You know, we had the other card. Was it Return Triumphant, which is 2 mana?
It's 2 mana.
Puts the one of the auras or rolls on it or whatever.
Yeah.
That doesn't get a lot of play, and it comes with even more upside.
Yeah.
You know, so sorcery speed, return a small thing.
Yeah, I think if it were instant speed, the card would be like pretty busted.
Sure.
Like if you use it to block, you know, something like that, flash block, or like put a guy into play EOT so he kind of has pseudo haste. Like, these are all things that could work.
Man, you know what's funny? I don't think I saw anybody cast it, and I streamed for like, I don't know, I think it was 12 hours or something.
I want to say that we did on stream see one person cast this card, and it wasn't particularly impressive.
Yeah.
This could be good. I think it was like certain ETB triggers early in the game, or like maybe on turn 3 you engineer it to where you get a 3-drop on turn 3, but you also have 2 mana left over for like make disappear another creature. Like there's things, but
you know what? Maybe this is, and this is just spitballing, but maybe there's a random use in one of the sacrifice type decks.
Yeah,
because everything you're sacrificing small, so like maybe you get back the gnome so you can get an extra life in a card.
Yeah.
Maybe you get back the evangelist, so you're getting 3 creatures. You're getting a bat, the vampire sack it, get another bat, maybe.
I played this for maybe 3 games in Aristocrats before realizing that like that deck needs a critical mass of creatures, first of all, and token makers and stuff, and it just didn't make the cut after a few games, and I had cast it. There is a line in Aristocrats where you have Bartholomew Greedy Freebooter, and you can sacrifice the Freebooter to the Bartholomew, get your treasure token, cast Helping Hand to get the Freebooter back. And it's a fun line because it's basically Freebooter paying for itself, and you get like a free counter on Bart, but it doesn't generate any mana. It looks good in that deck because it gets back Bart and Ellis and Vran and like a bunch of premier creatures in the deck, but like it also takes up a slot in the deck. And that's an issue.
A lot of the small creatures are getting exiled these days.
Yeah.
Right? Like Elspeth Smites, getting rid of the thing. You have all the different, like Glass Casket.
In a moment, I will ask you to go back and forth and start naming all the exile removal with me for another inch. It's just too much. Just long story short, there is too much.
Between exile removal and sweepers, there's like 40 cards right now. It's a ton.
It's ridiculous.
It's a ton.
We are on number... we're on number 3.
Yeah.
Your list. So, top 3. What's it going to be?
Corpses of the Lost. It's the 3-mana enchantment, comes into play, makes a 2/2 skeleton. Skeletons get +1/+0 in haste.
Is this overrated?
Beginning of your end step, if you put something in the yard, this returns to your hand.
I love this card.
My problem with it is, I don't know if I just want to be casting this every turn.
Yeah, absolutely not.
Right? Like, if there was some other way, if it was like, I have the ability to discard a card to make a skeleton, or can remove something from my graveyard, or maybe, because you have to descend, maybe if you remove like 3 things from the yard, you make another zombie, whatever. Or skeleton, I guess, in this case. The problem, though, is that it's just so slow to get what you want out of it.
Incredibly.
Right? You're paying 3 to get a 3/2 haste creature, which may or may not even do anything on that board state. And then end of turn, if you're lucky, you put it back into your hand to spend 3 mana again next turn at sorcery speed to make another 3/2, right? Like,
yeah, you're spending so much mana on this card. Turn over turn. And I made a comment during the spoiler video for this and first of all, I'm excited about this card. I love skeletons. They're one of my favorite creature types. If I see an Anthem effect for them, I like it, right? But that doesn't mean it's a competitively playable card. And basically I said, you're getting Escade zombies every turn. You're getting a 3-mana 2/2. And a couple of people in the comments are like, you're getting a 3-mana 3/2 actually. But if this pops back to your hand, all those 3/2s become 2/2s.
Exactly.
So that sucks. Yeah. And it's always on your opponent's turn too, because like if you're actually able to trigger it and it pops back to your hand, well, for your opponent's entire turn, now your creatures are far less able to trade with theirs. And the card, like competitively, I think just like actually sucks. Like it's just not good.
What deck do I want this where I'm okay, one, risking my thing that even makes the creatures, because now it's eligible to be countered, it can be discarded, whatever, right? So
a really good point.
Like when the green-black one existed from, what was that? It wasn't Kaldheim, but whatever.
Skeletal Swarming? Was it?
Yeah,
I think it may have been Kaldheim. Yeah.
But that was at least making a creature regularly without returning a card back to your hand, right?
Yeah.
So that makes a big difference. Like here, like I'd rather just be spending my mana to attack with the land creature.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't want to be playing a spell every turn and tying up mana just to maybe not get a 2/2.
It's like I could see this. I think that there's an argument for this in like the Caves deck, because that deck does trigger it to where it can come back to you again. You have plenty of mana in the end game, but even then, like a deck like Caves would want to cast this card 3 times in the same turn, but you can only ever really get the 1 token off of it every turn.
That's my other thing. If
yeah,
a way to bounce it, maybe, but you're still getting just a 2/2 every turn.
Yep.
Right. Now, I will say this: as we move into Karlov Manor, and then whatever the weird set they showed us supposed to be like the haunted house, whatever.
Yeah. Duskmore,
some number of skeletons, then this becomes way better.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. If we get playable like 2-drop skeletons for this to buff, you know,
then that's fine, because then you just leave it out there. Your opponent sweeps the board, and then you're like, okay, now I'll bounce it.
Exactly.
And then start rebuilding my board or whatever. Like
if I'm not mistaken, is it just during your turn, the way it's worded? Or does it work like
your instep?
Beginning of okay, so if your opponent like sweeps you with a sorcery speed sweeper, it doesn't automatically pop back. That makes it even worse.
Yeah,
but like, you're right though. If you do get swept, there's ways to like rebuild with this card, but it's just so much mana. Dude.
And not only that, mind you, you also have to pay a life for that privilege.
Right? Exactly. Yeah, it costs life too. I thought so.
But you have to pay a life to return it to your hand.
So I guess they assumed you'd be playing it in your commander deck where you have 40 life, but in standard, I'm not sure, man.
Yeah, it's like
even in commander, like it's kind of booty, right? Like 1/2/2 every turn, like big whoop.
There's not enough skeletons in standard to even consider this right now.
No.
Right? Not enough quality ones anyway.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's tough. But yeah, people were trying to convince me in my review, like, no, this card's great, and both like, yeah, I don't think so.
Yeah, I had it in the comments section too, you know, where people were just like, oh no, this card's great, and I don't.
People were trying to sell me on it.
People were basically telling me the card was wedding announcement, and like. No.
Oh no.
It costs 9 mana to be a wedding announcement.
Wedding announcement is free after your first turn, basically.
Right.
Keep getting 1/1s, and then it makes everything bigger, not just your humans or soldiers or whatever.
Right, or skeletons in this case.
Yeah, way different. Like I can spend my 3 mana one time and do other things for the turn, and I'm getting a token regardless. Right? So like, yeah, way different. Like this card, again, I think it's cool. I like the idea of it. I like it as a backup plan to be able to rebuild my board. But until there's more skeletons that are quality, I don't know if I can give this real consideration.
Nah, man, it's doo-doo, honestly. This is
there's too many other ways to make tokens that are just easier.
And better, yeah, like, would you rather play this or Lord Skitter?
Exactly.
Make a token every single turn?
Every time.
Awesome. Right? See, what are we on? Okay, we're on my number 3, but my number 3 is actually the only time that cards of ours have coincided. Because my number 3 was Souls of the Lost. So I'm going to skip to my number 2.
Yeah, go for it.
Which is... Sometimes there's a reason why cards are where they are on the list. And the reason this is my number 2 is I think there's a pretty big chasm between how a lot of people feel about this card and how I feel about this card. I think this card is kind of bad. And it's Brass's Tunnel Grinder. This is the 3 mana artifact that, you know, discard as many as you want, draw that many +1. And then I think it's at the end of your turn, if you descended this turn, put a counter on it. If it has 3 counters, flip it over. And then it becomes a land. And whenever you cast a spell with mana from that land, I think it has to be a permanent spell. Whenever you cast a permanent spell with mana from that land, you discover something. Equal to the mana value of the spell you cast. Look, I think some people are going to look at this and be like, okay, so this says skip your turn 3, and then 2 or 3 turns later, you just win the game. And I don't think it says that at all.
No.
Like, not even close. You know, first of all, you have to descend. Descending, I really, like, I already knew this, but you really learned it during early access. Descending requires cards, permanent cards go to the graveyard. So I was under the impression that, like, oh, if I pop a treasure, I've descended. Does not work that way. So descending is more work than it seems, first of all. So there's that. And even if you have to wait, okay, so I skip my turn 3 instead. I don't skip it, right? I technically draw a card, you know?
Still get to do something.
I guess I drew a card, but like I kind of skip my turn 3 in standard. And then this flips over, like, starting the earliest, it flips over like turn 6, right? More realistically, it flips over turn 7 or 8.
Yeah.
And then, like, you also have to have spells to cast with it. You have to actually hit something good when you discover. I kind of think this card is, like, actually bad.
Well, it does. It's like the other one too. It only triggers on your turn. Right?
Yeah, that's an
issue.
Yep.
just like you're saying, we got to have stuff go to the graveyard. So, anything that exiles doesn't help you out.
Yep.
If there's a place for this card, it's either in something that's trying to dig and load the graveyard, or just dig deep, right? And maybe have a long late game plan. Or something that maybe you're sideboarding this against like long control games or whatever.
Yeah, knowing that you have time to flip it over. You know?
So now like every card is technically 2 cards. Yeah, like that makes it a little better in those scenarios. But I think for just straight up 60 card, especially best of 1, don't know if this is what you're going to want most of the time. Unless, like, I saw it in, I think it was Legend VD was playing this in a Millennium Calendar one type deck.
That's so cute. Like,
then that way you're just digging and it gives you a way to get to your stuff, and it's putting counters on it, which works with your all will be one. So like that's kind of cool. So like in those builds where it's like a glue card, then like sure, I think that's fine. But I don't think it just goes into a pile of lists. No.
Yeah, like it goes in like every mid-range deck that plays red. Like those are the takes that I'm hearing about this card. And I do think that it's a decent mid-range card for red decks. Like, I'm not completely saying the card is just... I did say it's straight up bad, but I don't think it's... unplayable. And I do think that there are decks that might want something like this and can flip it over pretty reliably and all that. I do think it's good in long games against control, but against ramp, you're never going to get to it. Against aggro, and in best of 1, like you said, in best of 1, like what, 40% of your games at least going to be against either mono red or soldiers, probably a bigger percent than that. So it just,
well, it's not that. Now it's going to be dinosaurs or pirates. Or
I mean, some other deck that kills you on turn 4. So I understand it, and against it, I played against it once in early access. Where somebody was playing basically the deck I was talking about earlier. It's like a Boros deck that plays a ton of sweepers and ways to like put tokens and stuff on the battlefield. So like I could see it in a deck like that, but again, those decks are really fringe. So like you see this and you start thinking like, okay, Rakdos, okay, Jeskai, like there are homes for it, but I'm not sure how well this card fits the current standard meta. Period.
I think either for or against decks that are planning to go long, then this card's more than fine.
Yeah,
because then it just means like the next things you play they just count as a second spell or whatever, right? Because you're going to get to descend into another thing. But if you're doing anything fast, I don't think you want this card.
Yeah, like at all.
If your game plan is to try to end the game by turn 6, you don't want this card.
It's like you have to think about like, okay, so the turn you play, you're technically descending because you can discard something that's a permanent and descend. The next turn on turn 4 in your red deck,
because you get that number of cards plus 1.
Right. Yeah. Which is nice. Like I don't mind the like Valakut Awakening sort of ability on this card, but those like wheel effects tend to not see play even when they have other gravy on them, and this is just another form of that.
Yeah.
Now
but like, I'll also say if this is, I don't know if it exists, but if there is a descend deck, that's doing more than just trying to like reanimate some things or whatever, like a true descend deck, this could have a spot.
Oh, absolutely.
It counters. It's helping you 5 cards, put stuff into your graveyard. Like, sure.
I'm not discounting that. It's just like outside. Okay, so like you want to play this in your mid-range deck, like not a dedicated descend deck, you know, like sure it descends on turn 3. How are you descending on turn 4? How are you descending on turn 5? You know, like it's not as easy as it seems, right? So I just
totally.
Yeah. What is your number 2 then? We're getting close here.
My number 2 is a bit of a weird one here. And this is mostly because of pushback I got from comments and stuff people, were telling me on stream. But Starving Revenant. It's a 4-mana 4/4 spirit horror. Enters the battlefield, you surveil 2, and for the number of cards you leave on top, you draw those and lose 3 life. It has descend 8, so if there's 8 permanents in your yard, whenever you draw a card, if there's 8 or more permanents in your yard, target opponent loses a life, you gain a life.
Yeah.
Again, it's 4 mana in black. Like, again, in this video, we've listed 3-4 cards that you're going to play over this card practically every time, right?
Yep.
It doesn't have evasion. At best, maybe this goes into like the Sultai draw 2 deck.
Oh yeah,
right? Where, like you're already gaining life from drawing cards. You don't care that you're losing a couple, and then this automatically triggers your stuff. So that's kind of cool, but that's probably like the best use for it.
It's like I feel like it might go in that like Lurgoyf deck we were talking about earlier, because you can just surveil the cards into your yard, ETB, maybe. And like late in the game, it gives you a way to win the game without having to attack.
But how many cards are we drawing in that deck?
That's just it. Not a whole lot. We're just drawing a card every turn.
And that deck already has, like we said, we've been saying the Fairy, the Somnophage, the Goyf, the new 8/8 for 2. That if you descend 8 now, it's a creature
the ancient one.
Yeah, you can draw and discard. It's like it just has better things for the same cost or less.
Yeah, it's like I think again the big problem with this one, just like Bloodletter, is like Shieldred's in the format, and in this card's case, not only is Shieldred in the format, Bloodletter is in the format. So like,
yeah.
But I will say, like a 4 mana, what is it? A 4 mana 4/4 like draw 2. It costs you 6 life to draw 2, but you can draw 1 for 3 and put the other one in your yard or whatever, or keep the other one on top, whatever you're doing. I don't hate this card like at all, and I know we don't hate any of the cards on our list.
Like it reads like it should be. Oh yeah, I'm definitely putting this into a deck.
Yeah,
right. You know what I mean? You're like a 4 mana 4/4, and I might get to draw cards, and I could drain my opponent's life total. This sounds awesome.
Awesome, but I think that
where do you put it?
I think that one of the big like lessons for our lists, both of them, is that like cards at 4 and 5 mana in current standard have to be like unbelievably strong.
Sure.
So strong. Like Magmatic Galleon's not on. Go ahead.
Even the dinosaurs got a 4/5 reach trample for 4.
It's like it's like a normal uncommon.
Yeah, you can't even beat that card with this.
Yeah. That's a good point. That's a great point, actually. Yeah, I have issues with it.
Colossodactyl, I think, is what that thing is.
It is called Colossodactyl. Yeah. So yeah, I mostly agree. I'm ready to do some stuff with this card. I think a 4 mana 4/4 kind of draw 2 plus other gravy. Like it all looks great, but again, you're right, man. Like there's just so much more, so many other things you can do for 4 mana that like it's not as exciting as it should look. Yeah.
Maybe there's a home, some weird spot where you're doing some life drain, like I said, with the draw 2 deck. Maybe there's some black-white drain your opponent type thing that you want to do, and this kind of just contributes to that game plan. Makes a lot of sense. And if you're playing against a slow deck, this isn't so bad. You play it, you're going to have life to spend. You can maybe find another creature to rebuild. So it's like, it has uses, but I feel like you're going to have to build, and then this is going to be like cards maybe 58, 59, 60, right?
Yeah, maybe.
Or maybe even 59 and 60. maybe you only get 2 copies.
I think Shieldred helped us learn that like sometimes all a creature has to do is sit on the battlefield to be threatening. Yeah. And this has that same kind of potential, but like Shieldred's still in the format, so just play that, like
well, yeah, but do you even think about like the Dracosaur in red? Just like if it sits there, it's just like free stuff.
That dude is insane. The 5 mana like draw 2 every turn, and like sometimes you randomly get creatures and treasures.
No, it's technically draw 2, and then you get a body or treasure.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like you get draw 2 plus other stuff, like,
and you still get your normal card for the turn.
That dude, like, and that guy's 5 mana, and like I'm not even convinced he ends up seeing play in real standard because he's 5 mana. Like that's
he may not.
Like that's how insane crazy a card has to be at that mana cost, and like the same thing's true of 4. So I agree. I agree. But we are at, I think, my number 1 here.
Yeah. What you got?
You've cheated on a couple, so I'm going to cheat on this one entry. And just say, like, blanket, generalized, every single one of these legendary creatures that becomes a land when it dies.
Really?
These are
okay.
These are crazy overrated to me, dude. And I'm really excited about playing Aklazotz, the black one. He looks amazing. All the text on that guy is incredible to me. I'm excited a little bit about the red one and the blue one that like gives your spells rebound and stuff. Like some of these look okay, but we're in a standard right now where like Sunfall is the most played removal spell or the most played sweeper. Farewell exists. And a million other like exile removal cards. We just got Duskrose Reliquary, that exiles the thing. Leyline Binding, that exiles the thing, Ossification. Like all the white removal that's played in standard exiles the thing. And like even some other things will exile the thing. Sometimes you'll see like Pylon or whatever. Yeah. So it's pretty ridiculous. The Kamigawa Neon Dynasty, those like legendary dragons. Like Ao, the white one, Ao is an unbelievable magic card. Atsushi sees some play.
Yeah.
A little bit here and there,
The others never get played.
Never. And like they're really like the black one is crazy. It's a 5 mana reanimation spell that's also on a 5/5 flyer. Like,
I've squeezed it into a couple of lists, but it's like, it's card 59 or 60.
exactly. It's like, okay, maybe I guess I'll play this, you know?
Yeah.
So, and I think that a lot of that is because of all the exile removal. So I really like these guys, but I think a lot of them are priced out. You know, like we were just talking about how incredible a 5-mana card has to be in standard to see play. I'm not sure Aklazutz gets there. The white one is 6 mana, dude, and I just don't think you can play a card in standard for 6 mana. Go ahead.
That card was my number 1.
Really? Really? The white one? Okay, yeah. So that makes sense. Yeah, that card I think is a commander card and basically nothing else.
Yeah, I will say, if I'm playing a tokens build in standard, because I do that a couple times a season, I'll play one of. Like, at 6 mana, I don't mind if it shows up on time, and then now I'm making 3 or 4, 6 tokens, I guess, a turn instead of 1 or 2. That's fine, right? Like, I'm not, because the problem is, like, you already have Mondrak in standard.
Yeah.
And that's already.
And he already doesn't really see play.
Yeah, so if Mondrak doubles everything, you're already probably winning anyway. So, sure, I'll play one of these just for the upside and the fun of, as I call it, if you're going to play a 1 card. But, yeah, that's fine. You play like 2 Mondrak, one of these, and go for it. But I don't think it has really room anywhere else, is the problem.
Even in, like, a tokens deck. Okay, so, like, at 6 mana in white, like, I'm not playing Farewell in my tokens deck, but am I playing the Eternal Wanderer instead of this? I might. You know, like
it sometimes makes the cut on mine, sometimes it doesn't.
It's just so much like win more. You know, like
oh sure, but that's why you're playing the tokens deck, though.
Yeah, I mean the first I will say it's gonna feel that's all tokens ever does is win more.
I will say this. I think for the other gods, or really just them as a whole, you almost can't think about getting to use them a second time. Right? I think just whatever they do on the front side has to be good enough. And I think when looking at that, the white one's really slow. You know what you're getting, but it's real slow. At 6. The red one, reasonable, because there's a lot of things you can do without ever even attacking or putting it at risk or whatever, and still fire off a bunch of damage. Black one, if your deck's a discard deck and doing what it's supposed to do, maybe, because they'll have limited options to kill it. Just straight up, I don't know. I think that's a little bit of a tough call. I did see one build during early access with the blue one. That was actually pretty slick. It was
the blue one I think has the most like potential altogether.
Yeah, it was using like the iteration to copy spells. So like you were getting that on rebound, copying something else that turn, and the next turn you got to copy a thing, and like it was pretty cool.
Okay,
it was a super close game. I barely won it. If they'd have got another 1 mana like burn spell or something, I would have died. So like that was pretty sweet, but it needs that kind of build. I don't know if it just goes into a pile of things, is the issue there. And the green one's fine because you can just play that. I mean, some green or green-red aggro or whatever. If it dies, great. If it connects, you're getting a free creature.
Yeah.
So it's whatever. But so yeah, I would say probably the red one and the green one probably have the most upside because they can just go in decks that already do what they're trying to do, I guess. And they're just a body that happens to have upside.
It's like the green one you can kind of play incidentally, and it's not a big deal. Yeah,
it's a 6/5 with trample and get you free stuff, right? And then if they happen to be lands and you can flip them later, then great. But I don't think you're planning on that with any of them, honestly. It's just, are they good enough on face value? And I think because people see the abilities on them, I think is where the hype comes up. You're like, well, with this red one, if I just get like a couple of play with fires, now I'm dealing 8 damage. And yeah, that's going to be awesome when it happens. As just a 4/4 body, is it good enough? Probably not.
Probably not. It's just another 4-mana 4/4.
But if you can get anything that pings your opponent, pretty good, right?
Yeah, I think before we actually got on, you had an awesome little combo I hadn't thought about yet that I want to give you the credit for with your Axonal, the whole Thermo Alchemists and stuff. God, like Kessig Flame Breather does like 4 when that's disgusting. That seems so gross.
Well, that, like we were saying, the 3/2 devil that pings when something comes into play, you can still play the Voldaren Epicure. You can still play.
That's 4 damage. Like an Obnic Silas, like devil token is 4 because I think that's red.
Yep.
Pretty gross.
A build like that where it can fit. It's like, okay, the deck's already decent, and this takes it up a level.
It's like in Pioneer or whatever, like Mayhem Devil starts doing 4 every time you sack a permanent, which is
I mean,
nasty.
It's the type of card, like, if you have one or two of those pieces out, your opponent could be like at 10 life, and you just cast that and they die. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
yeah. If you have ways of making it, like,
you could do
proc
12
that
damage
turn.
that guy just showed up.
Yeah, just because he's on the table.
Yeah.
So we keep seeing these, like, 4-mana red guys. I'm really excited about it first. Like, Urabrask seems busted, and then, like, he just doesn't do much.
No.
So we haven't had, like, a big red deck. I feel like we're starting, like, every set. Like, we got Magmatic Galleon in this set. We got your Axonil in this set. We keep getting these signposts for big red that we don't actually... But it never happens, you know. Like, here's Brotherhood's End, here's Burn Down the House, here's Charming Scoundrel, like all these amazing big red cards, Urabrask Forge, and then like it doesn't materialize.
I mean, I built a mono red Planeswalker deck this season that was sweet.
Yeah, Koth is the truth, dude. Koth is a really good Planeswalker. I even like Jaya, the 4-mana Jaya.
Oh, sure.
I think she's great too.
In that list.
Yeah, she's good, but it just can't.
I think as far as these gods go, I think it's just. I think, like I said, I think the red and the green one are probably the easiest. Because you don't even have to build around them. You can just build things already good with the rest of the deck, and they just fit. The others, I think you kind of have to build around, and that becomes a little bit of the holdback on those cards.
Again, I like the black one, and I will say one more time about the blue one, that I think especially if you can engineer a situation where, like, okay, I'm not playing it on curve, you know, I'm playing it with 5 mana or 6 mana available, and, you know, I can play a spell the turn I play it, then, like, maybe that card gets better.
I think if I were to just guess, I would probably say the red one has the highest chance of finding a reasonable, normal build for competitive play.
Yeah.
Then maybe the green one, but not because it's what it is, just it's a reasonable body in the 5 slot.
Yeah.
Right? If some mono green or green red mid-creature size deck is viable, this probably makes the cut.
But I guess you said your number one was the White God, if I'm not mistaken. Yep. So yeah, that is our lists. I believe we did it. That is all 10 of ours. I'm surprised there wasn't like slightly more overlap on our list. I'm glad there wasn't. Really,
that was good. That was good.
But just let us know in the comments like how you feel about AR takes. But anything that we didn't put on the list that you think is like overrated, obviously hit us with that too. And check out PowrDragn's channel in case you if this is the first time or possibly the second time because we've done content together before that you're seeing PowrDragn, for God's sake go check out PowrDragn's channel.
Literally content every single day for over 3.5 years on my YouTube channel.
It's like one of the premier like workhorses, one of the Lou Gehrigs of our hobby. This dude puts out content every day, super consistently, and it's always like you might think that a content creator doing that is going to put out like nothing but like super high tier decks and it's going to be the same deck every day and we're going to see how we do with it today. No, PowrDragn does a different deck basically every day, and if you like janky stuff and you're here so you do, then check out PowrDragn's channel.
True story. When we got to the 3-year mark of decks every day, I actually made a shirt that would just outwork everybody. And that's what we had for sale. Yep. So
the literal
one of those, that's available too on my YouTube channel.
Get it. The literal hardest working man like in our community. If you don't know PowrDragn, you should. Where have you been, kid? Dude, go check out his channel.
For sure.
He deserves a billion subscribers. He does a lot for this community and he puts a lot of work in. So just never stops, dude. He never stops.
No.
So,
I do a ton even off of YouTube.
Yeah, he does. Trust me. I've seen part of your schedule and like I have to sleep. So it's just the reward all of his grinding with a sub over there. Just check out his videos, you know. And aside from that, you know, do all the YouTube stuff. Just like the video, subscribe if you're new to this channel. That would be a trip if this was your first video and you watch 2 minutes of 2 people you've never seen before. But hopefully we were both entertaining enough for you. Subscribe to PowrDragn's channel too and do all the other stuff. Check out our Twitch channel, link in the description. Patreon, link in the description. $1 a month is all it costs to be a patron, and you can vote on what decks we do all throughout Ixalan seasons. First poll of the season comes up tomorrow as I record this, so get in there. You don't have too much time, but that's about it. PowrDragn, you got anything else to say here?
No, that's it. It was a lot of fun. We should do this again. Like I said, we can talk about all types of cards in this set. I think the Ixalan was, I mean, honestly, Wilds of Eldraine was great. And this is also great coming right on the heels of that. So it's going to be a fun time in Standard.
Yeah, man. 2 really good looking sets like in a row. Really like 3 or 4 really good looking sets in a row. So if we're being honest, Standard's shaping up, man. So I can't wait till we get an actual rotation or like a banning or something, you know, to really let some of these shine. But all I'll say is that if everything stays the exact same, I do think we'll have some new decks on day one of this,
Definitely.
you know, and that's sometimes all you can really ask for. So, but yeah, just let us know how you felt about all the goings on down there in the comments section. And we, both of us, will catch you cats later. Go check out PowrDragn's channel and stay on mine and watch my stuff too. I want you to do that. But anyway, I'm Deb from The Place. Thanks for watching, Wizards. Spread love and be kind.